Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now, also from our Abuja studio, to talk about current political issues is Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, public affairs analyst and member of This Day newspaper's editorial board. Okay, good morning.
Morning, Ruben.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you. Well, you followed our discussion with Dr. Fashua, right? Now, we've been talking to quite a number of presidential candidates, all their representatives or party members, now that the campaigns have started. Now, if you look at the presidential candidates, we have so many of them, almost about 7 now or 81. Who are the ones that you think Nigerians should be taking seriously? And why should they take them seriously?
Well, the basic thing is that in contesting for the presidency, there are conditions which you have to meet: age, credibility, and the rest of it. And on these general terms, most of them have met the conditions. But winning an election is different from declaring interest in a public office. To the extent that we're talking about those who understand the economics of power, the political economy of politicking in Nigeria, who have the necessary network of members and resources, I would want to think that besides the PDP and the APC, the others have major problems of capacity, spread, and traction. The other party would have been the SDP, but it has a slight problem. At the moment, he has a very credible candidate in Donald Duke. And I started by speaking of criteria. Right now, the national mood is that the president should come from a particular part of the country. And so, assuming somebody, for instance, like Professor Jerry Ghana had cleaned the ticket, as people thought he would during the primaries, one would have said, yeah, that there's a third candidate who, on the basis of his own profile and stature, which is as good as that of Donald Duke, could have presented a tougher challenge. Besides APC and PDP, of course, the other candidates, let's put it on record, they are very intelligent people. They mean well for the country. Most of them are experienced in public administration. But you find that the level of idealism with which they are going into the business does not have the muscle to drive real access to power. So they assume that on the basis of understanding policy, on the basis of their engagement in the public space, on the basis of Twitter and Facebook, and a lot of young people who praise them, that it's a matter of waiting for February when they vote and get sworn in May. It doesn't work like that. So for many of the other candidates, very brilliant ladies and gentlemen, one can safely assume that their foray is simply will lead to their further education about the politics of Nigeria, but not that they're going to emerge serious. And if you look at it, go back in history, none of them is as popular, half as popular as Gani was in his days. Gani contested the elections. That was when he woke up to the reality that the crowd psychology of excitement is different from the politics, not just of the stomach, but of relevance, of spread, of network, of the consensus of stakeholders, and the rest of it. Well, most of the other candidates have none of these. And
you've narrowed down
most of them have none of these, so it will be good.
You've narrowed down to the two major political
So they will
parties.
excite.
You narrowed down to the two major political parties, and then you mentioned Donald Duke. But we've also had some guests on this program who have talked about Kingsley Moghalu, Omoyele Sowore, Obiageli Ezekwesili. Do you think these three in particular, that persons have mentioned here before, do you think they stand a chance? Or they are just also...
Not a chance, not a dying dog's chance.
Please
No. The three people you've mentioned, take Kingsley, for instance. His book, Imagine Africa, is what gave him professorship. I reviewed that book. It's one of the best works for anybody who wants to see Africa and the global economy without blinkers. And Kingsley is a sound scholar, a good student of policy, who understands the issues and how they can be dealt with. But that understanding is different from having the leverage at the level of political economy to fine-tune or retwist the Nigerian state. Of course, I've also had him in, there's been engagements where we were together. there was a budget roundtable on which two of us were the speakers. You see, he has good ideas, no question about that. Nigeria needs a new world view. We need investment funding and the rest of it. But that thesis is based on the assumption that there isn't an existing worldview of perfidy, consumption, and corruption already, which is the dominant worldview, which is well serviced, and for which we've not seen the template with which anybody is going to address it. So the three people you've mentioned have that advantage, or if you like, the strength of understanding of the problems. But every builder must build on a particular kind of soil, within a particular kind of environment. They don't have the instruments that will dig into the Nigerian human socio-political soil to effect a change. Who will man their polling booths all over the country? Who will be the officers? So it's different to go somewhere and make a speech and everybody is clapping. Yes, there are a lot of young people who are supporting them, but the Nigerian state has become such a dangerously, if you like, criminal enterprise that idealism, the excitement of showing the kind of policy that will take us to heaven would not be enough to leverage any of the three. Sowore, who is very young, he was a student when I was teaching in Unilag. Malcolm, his friend, was my student. Sowore remains a very strong instrument for popular consciousness. Look at his paper, look at the risk he was taking. As a lecturer, I watched him take great personal risks. There was a time even his fellow students had wanted to poison him and the rest of it. We need these people to promote and drive public consciousness and demand for good governance. But as for the 2019 presidency, they are not going anywhere, with all due respect to their efforts.
Well, there's been some comment about the misogyny at work in the political space, also in terms of female representation. If you look at that long list of presidential candidates, you have just very few women, maybe about 2 female presidential candidates. Do you think that seriously this is something that Nigeria needs to address so that we can have more women running for the presidency of Nigeria? Or you think Nigeria, the time has not come yet for Nigeria to begin to think of a female president?
No, it's not really a question of whether the time has come, but let us address the popular thesis that we need a level playing field for everybody in politics. First of all, politics is not football. If you want to play football, go to a level playing field. Politics is more like a wild forest where you have crocodiles, boa constrictors, anaconda, quicksand, falling trees, poisonous spiders. You must prepare for the fight. So you cannot tender gender as thesis for engagement. You're not a cripple. The point is that, are you capable of being a good leader? Not are you a woman. If somebody like Obi, for instance, were to become president in an ideal setting, she will run the right policies and have the courage to drive them through. But our environment will not provide enough leverage. She cannot get enough leverage here to make that happen. Now, she would be president not because she's a woman, but because she's demonstrating or has demonstrated capacity to lead. Those are the issues on the table.
Okay,
so when we argue gender from the angle of, from that angle, it becomes a problem because when you have political events, it's the women who come there mostly to dance. Is it men that assign them that role? Can they on their own say, no, we ought to do something better than this? Not just wear uniform, come and stand in the sun, dance loudly and go away, and that's your contribution. Is there a national policy on women to dance during rallies? Is that part of a party manifesto? Mm-hmm. So people should pick themselves up from the ground and not use gender to cover up their lack of focus. Okay. That's my take.
All right, so you have now narrowed it down to the 2 parties, which is the ruling APC and the Atiku ticket, correct? And so what do you make of the Buhari next level policy document?
I would say it's a no-level document. The government has been on for 3 years, lethargic, incompetent, has made the nation more divided, has demonstrated an unparalleled capacity for incoherence in addressing national issues, allows controversies to thrive until fake news takes over the space, and with all due respect to the efforts made, is unwilling to admit clear facts and take responsibility. And looking at the document, well, I wouldn't want to say it contains lies, but honestly, after 3 years, I thought despite the the zigzag and wobbly motion of the activities of government, that some people at least made a greater effort to deceive us by producing a worthwhile document. I read through El-Rufai's, the El-Rufai Committee's paper on restructuring. It's a very well-written document. At least somebody could even have followed Nasser's template and presented something that is believable. It also shows the lack of cohesion at the level of strategy. It shows the kind of thing people who are central to the activities of the government are satisfied with, that this is good enough to go public with. So you call it a next-level paper. I call it a no-level document that if indeed we are to take it seriously and the government is to return based on that document, we are finished. That's my take.
Well, Oji didn't call it next level. The APC called it the next level.
Exactly.
However, I would also like to get your take on the article Make Nigeria.
And I called it a no level.
Great. Okay, so the article Let's Get Nigeria Working Again policy, what do you think about it? There have been controversies, especially about privatization of the NNPC, tax rebates, tax cuts, and some of those issues. What's your take?
Well, I read it just like I read that of the APC, and I have some concerns. Between the two documents, I think that the PDP, the article document, at least showed some greater effort to produce something credible. I believe that the analysis is largely correct of the problems, but is also very technical because it spent too many of the early pages telling us what is wrong with Nigeria. We know all of that. All the percentages, all the statistics, all the analysis, a little tiring, but it's actually correct. But on the whole, the vision in the document and the proposals can best be described as statements of good intention. This is what we want to do. Now, anybody can say that. And I want to touch specifically on one or two of them. Now, you see in the document there were sections where the commencement of the relevant chapter, if you like, started in the first person singular, I. It is not right. And also reading through the document and the PDP manifesto and constitution and the rest of it, you see that in producing that document, there wasn't really any serious and conscious effort for an organic merger of articles vision with PDP. And I'm speaking in this detail because what I see is actually an incoming government. It will be a disaster if it doesn't win, but that's why we must not spare any effort in pointing out where they are not quite getting it right. You have the 5-point economic agenda, which is in the document. Now, I am not convinced that that is operating with a certain sense of history. We had needs, the needs document. We had the seats. The seats, which involved the states, was never implemented. Atiku was vice president. They produced the needs document. They were the ones who led to the sale of House of Legislators, Courses, and the rest of it. So you find that the 5-point economic agenda, if you read it through and you say it's produced by Ruben or Okey, or a market woman, anybody can write those things. So it diminishes the expected stature of a seasoned statesman. You can't just make blunt statements. We will do this. No. We've gone beyond all of that. We need implementation strategies in addition to recommendations. And so you then look at page 19 of it, you find that it's on that of promoting oil and gas sector. What do they offer us? To create a transparent incentive regime for purposeful growth of the national reserve base for oil and gas. This is a generalization, and it runs through the entire thing. Page 20, under promoting the economy, we are told we shall build a knowledge-based economy. ICT shall be applied to healthcare, education, commerce, agriculture, industry. To begin with, ICT is applied to some degree in these things. So the declaration does not translate into a roadmap for anything to be done. And this is clearly unacceptable, not at this level, not with the sophistication of Atiku, not with the strength of the PDP. And we are talking about an incoming government. And if you look at page 23, you find that for promoting public enterprises, you're going to privatize. Of course, I don't need to go, that has been touched upon. Then you see the priorities are for poverty alleviation, job creation, infrastructure, and the rest of it. Now, those priorities, should they not include values reorientation, or rather anti-corruption through values reorientation? So if it's a 4-point agenda they are looking at, they have to make it 5. The crisis of the Nigerian state today is that of values, where leaders don't play the roles they should play, where followers have the wrong expectations, and those expectations are fanned by the leader's own lifestyle.
Okay, so let me come in again at this
better than this. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Well, when you were talking about President Buhari earlier, you used the word, some very harsh adjectives. But I think you were a bit softer when you were describing Vice President Atiku. But that's not my question. The question is about...
Okay, then, hold on, let me get hard. Ruben, hold on, let me get onto the hard adjective. No. And I believe I tried in that regard, because I said, for his stature and experience and if I had been in government, I tell you frankly, Ruben, I'm thoroughly disappointed with the document. With all due respect to the PDP, they can do much better than this. Why I have to be this strong and harsh is that you're talking about a government that will come in to rescue us for our present real calamity. So to do generalizations, to talk about your vision, are you not part of a party? Are we working towards individual visions from which we've suffered so far, or are we trying to build Nigeria? My interest is in Nigeria, in good leadership, in good governance, not in Atiku as a person, not in PDP as a party. So no, if
let's talk about
if that's how it appeared.
Let's talk about perception. I mean, both parties have perception issues. Okay. The two leading candidates also have perception issues in terms of, public expectations, public impressions. How do you think that, they can manage those perception crises to prevent a third force? Perhaps because of the crisis of perception that the two candidates, the two major parties face, maybe perhaps a third force will emerge. Because we had Olisa Agbakoba here who was saying, look, the plan for a third force is still on, and that by January we will know the direction in which the coalition of united political parties may be going.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to maintain, but you cannot have a coalition of self-seeking individuals and it will become a coalition. So I don't see any third, fourth, or 2.5 quarter force. It's not about to happen because a third force is not established and driven on radio, on the Facebook and the rest of it. It has to be on ground. So I dismiss that completely with all due respect to those propagating it. But that is not to say that the attempt will not be made. The perception challenge facing the two parties, they have to address. The one of APC is that of incompetence, using lies as raw material for statecraft, nepotism, total incapacity, proven incapacity to address issues of national security, and so many other things. Now, it is not getting better. Many of those who had hopes when they voted in 2015 have lost hope and are not likely to vote for the party. But then it's for the party to manage it. However, the current method with which it is managing it, if indeed that is management, is behaving as if he's like a player who's been bribed to play against his team. The Minister of Information speaks, and you wonder whether he's working towards ensuring the party doesn't work. You see members of the party shooting at each other. You see the chairman unable to get on with the governor. So the perception that has emerged is not only one of a party that cannot govern Nigeria, but one also that is incapable of managing itself. He came to power. He didn't appoint ministers for 4 months, going 5 and 6. When they were appointed, it was without consultation. It was the president's list. When they finally emerged, what was there? There was a renegade Senate presidency, not supported by the party. So you don't have a cohesive group. And if after 3 years the party has only become more divided, has made Nigeria more divided, that's precisely the reason why it must not, in the view of those who are very eager about this, be given a chance to return. Coming to the PDP, yes, there are serious perception issues. There are controversies, or there were controversies surrounding the circumstance of emergence of the current chairman. Fortunately, they've brought it under control. In fact, part of the fallout of that was also what affected the primaries in Port Harcourt that cost the candidate who seconded the ticket. The perception that those who produce the chairman, if they produce him, they will own the party, they will own the country and the rest of it. Beyond that, you cannot say in all honesty that impunity has disappeared from the party. But the party has also taken quite a beating and is struggling to pull itself together. Whether it is doing that successfully now is open to argument. Okay. It's preparing for elections. How is it preparing for that? And the two candidates went to the East, I think last week, to consult. You know, there was this slight controversy over Peter Obi. In going to the East to consult with the East, was Ekweremadu involved before the trip was set out? Was he involved in calling his stakeholders? How many state governors were involved? So you see that already within the party, within the East, as it is and as I speak, there's already some discontent even about the trip to create a reconciliation.
Is a problem in the East? Is the problem in the East the choice of Peter?
Why that?
Is the problem the choice of Peter Obi by Atiku Abubakar, or the problem is that he did not allegedly consult certain stakeholders in the East? Because other Nigerians are wondering why this so much furore over the choice of somebody from the Southeast as a running mate in the PDP.
Well, for me as a person, the choice of Atiku, I will go by that choice 150% any day, because we need competence, we need certain things. Okay. But people felt they were not consulted. And unfortunately, rather than behave like others, they went public. But the other point to make, which should be taken more seriously, is that the people of the Southeast will not refuse to vote for Atiku and Peter just because some people were angry. No. The election is a different thing, but it's important to have group cohesion, so that even as you're emerging, you don't have peer envy, you don't have enemy action, you don't have people within the house who, whenever you pass, they hiss. The trip to Enugu had the good effect. Ohaneze was there and all of that, but as I speak, there's an undercurrent of even greater outrage. Not that they are opposing Peter's emergence anymore, but that, is this really how it's going to be? You come in, meet with whoever you like, and go back. This they should go and verify.
Okay.
Was it, so I guess I've made the point, essentially.
Yes, you have. Let me ask you these two questions very quickly. You have shredded and discredited the two policy documents by the two main parties who have apparently given themselves pats on the back to say that for the first time, this is an issue-based campaign, this is an issue-based elections we're going into. Well, you have shredded those documents. So I ask you, what should these parties be doing? What should Nigerians be looking forward to? Because you also say it's not time for a third first. Secondly, let me ask you, when Nigerians go out in February to vote, they will not only be voting for the president, there's also the National Assembly elections. But there seems to be little said about these elections where over 400 people will be representing the people almost directly. Do you think that the focus here should change?
Well, on the first question, I'm surprised. I thought I started by giving them a pat because they even took trouble to prepare a document. They should go and rework the documents. It's as simple as that. Because somebody has disagreed with you, you don't throw away your workbook. You find out maybe you score 3 over 10 or 8 over 10, you work on the other 2. Those documents, particularly that of the PDP, which demonstrates greater capacity, should go and have more work done on it. Look at the section on agriculture. You want to promote agriculture in a country where the rivers are being drying up because of irrigation. So there's no interface between Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, of Water Resources, and and transportation. So there are so many issues around that. These things have to be taken holistically. So we can't have a government coming in after what we are going through that is not thorough enough. That's my concern. So it's not a criticism of the PDP, of Atiku, or anybody, but a focus on the need to place the national interest first. You want to create ports. Yes, it would be good to have a port in Onitsha. But where will the water come from? You've dammed all the waters. But people are till tomorrow working very hard to ensure that we have a port, a seaport in Onitsha. And assuming it does come and you buy pure water and fill up the channel, who will allow the ship, what do you call them, the insurgents around the Delta will be clapping as your ship is passing to Onitsha? We have to become more realistic. Our inland waterways practically don't exist anymore. National unity suffers because of limited transport network. So an incoming government has to be very comprehensive. Environmental issues. Look at the section on environment. Look at the section on the Northeast. You're talking about Northeast and you're talking about setting up a commission to deal with their job and the rest of it. My dear friends, read desertification has occurred in most of those places. Local economies have collapsed. Those producing sugarcane no longer produce sugarcane. You're talking about refugees and rations. Community, the sunset community has evaporated. And even on the positive side for the government, a few months ago, 3 months ago specifically, I was in Maiduguri. There was a training we organized for armed forces personnel on asymmetrical communication in the kind of situation they were. We found out the government is not even able to discover its own advantages. Life had returned to Maiduguri to a degree we didn't know. We went to see the Shehu of Borno. We found out, I think it was only 2 or 3 out of more than 30 emirs who hadn't gone back to their places. This government is totally uncoordinated. But in addition, this government is not the cause of the problems of Nigeria. It only worsened it by not doing the right things at the right time immediately after it took over.
Well, I mean, we've had many elections in Nigeria at various levels. What do you think?
Sorry, on the point about the sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll come back to you after you have answered that second.
No. On the point about the National Assembly elections,
yes.
How that should be taken in, how that is often not part of the conversation. Well, usually there's this bandwagon effect when you talk about the presidential elections. But fortunately, the political space is also loosening up a little. People are paying a little more attention to their local brothers and sisters who are contesting. So one would expect that candidates, rather than focusing on riding on the back of the presidency or their party, will have to market themselves. There was something Sam Egu, who was then governor of Ebonyi State, did in those days, during the Obasanjo days. PDP always won in Ebonyi. And one day, I ran his campaign as DG. I said, how was this really? How did you make this happen? He said, no, it's quite simple. I'll go to the communities, if it's a senatorial district. I'll tell them, okay, who do you want to represent you? The person you know you can trust, you believe in. It's not about whether he has money. That's the person they will field as a candidate and he will win. The same for House of Reps, House of Assembly. And he created what you might call a service commission for the party. So the party officials were not just beggars crawling on about. They were paid something every month. The party chairman had a car, the others had motorcycles. You see, that's how politics and the polity develop. You have political parties that do not engage in political education as we speak. They are waiting to rig. So their members are not even informed. They don't have rallies except during elections, whereas they ought to have regular meetings through which members will say, yes, I belong to this party. I once produced a template for that. That was when I was essay to Jomado Ekwe.
Well, as we go forward to the 2019 elections, what do you think will likely make the 2019 elections significantly different from other elections we have had?
The credibility of INEC's processes and the fairly predictable neutrality of INEC. You see, and I take that from several angles. Mahmoud, who is the current INEC chairman, is somebody I know. We've worked closely. He has a couple of things to his advantage. One, he's a first-class scholar. He's a very thorough person. He is not easily deceived. He's also not somebody who will come and frighten with money or state apparatus. Right. He's been part of the faculty of the Nigerian Defense Academy. Yes, he's a seasoned person. And I believe that given his profile, he should be more interested in what he will do after being INEC chairman than in pleasing a government in power. And I'm strengthened in the suspicion that he will do well because of the Zamfara situation. Zamfara is a ruling party state. And the position of INEC on that, shocking as it is a reality under his watch. So INEC has to struggle and look at where the problems come from. Late arrival of materials, poor training of personnel. Jega has set a precedent by using academics. I was once a presiding officer during the SDP, PDP thing under Babangida. So that is from one angle, the electoral processes. Then the parties should actually campaign. Do real campaign at the ward levels. Let people meet and talk with themselves. Let them meet regularly. Organize a rally, a meeting in the wards every month. Probably budget 100,000, 200 for it. The people meet themselves, crack jokes, begin to feel a sense of solidarity. And that's what could make them feel embarrassed if they are seen on the line voting for somebody else. So you must build organic political structures. INEC and the federal government cannot come and run your party for you. it is work that has to be done by the parties. The other thing, of course, is to provide adequate security. People have expressed concern that, look, they had an election in Ekiti State, and they used nearly 100,000 policemen. So if you now have it in 36 states, are we going to import policemen from the moon? Let's get the logic. If you have elections in the 36 states, every person will keep his thugs. It's as simple as that. So you're not going to have so many people available. But the point is that rigging and all of that becomes much easier when there is no conviction. When members of the political party only come to collect money and go away, they may not even know the name of the leader they are talking about. Political education will be a strong investment towards improving the credibility of the outcome of the elections.
Well, thank you. Okay. On that note, we'll have to bring this to a close. It's been very interesting having this conversation with you on the political process as we go towards the 2019 general elections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's time now for a short break on the